So the proper way to storing and stacking your firewood. It comes down to this. Number one, it comes down to you. Your geographical location, the space available, the time available, the materials that you have on hand, and your geographical landscape. Any damn well way you please, and what suits you best based on those things. That's what it's ultimately going to come down to. But you need to do... Let me tell you about this video. There was a couple videos actually that I watched and clicked on. Got my attention. Okay, so job well done there. It was from this guy who has this channel called wranglerstar. And I believe it was titled something like about the proper way to stack firewood. And I'm thinking, okay, oh really? Based on the picture that I'm seeing, this ought to be interesting. So I'm watching this video. And he goes on about why this is the proper way or the best way and where it comes from. I think it was from Germany or Sweden or something like that. Now, when it comes to watches and automobiles, all right, you got my attention, Germans and Swiss out there. But if you stack your firewood the way this man does, no thank you. So as I'm watching him, he draws out this circle. It's like a 10-foot diameter, right? He scribes in the dirt. It's got to be somewhat level land. And then he puts down this tarp or this some sort of barrier material. And he's meticulously picking out sticks of wood out of his wood pile, the perfect piece to make this circle on the ground. It was like a grown man down on his hands and knees playing with this firewood in a sandbox like he's playing with Legos. This man's got way too much time on his hands. Still to this day, I can drive around here in the Ozarks and probably all across the country, and I can find people who year after year and decade after decade harvest, cut, split their firewood, and they just throw it over in a big old pile on the ground year after year, maybe covered, maybe not covered, or partially covered, depending on the weather that might be coming in. And here's the kicker about that, is that every single year they come out on the other side of winter just as well off as I do and anybody else, and they never even spent the extra time or energy in stacking their firewood. So just keep that in mind. But this other video that I come across, he didn't do it quite like that. Morgan's or Morgan's something. I can't remember the channel name. But anyway, I'm seeing this guy doing his linear firewood stacking. It's not as bad as what I saw on this wranglerstar channel, you know, but it's pretty damn well close to it. But he is out there. When he cuts his firewood, he says that he takes a tape measure and a piece of chalk, and so that he can get exact pieces, and he says it's necessary in order for his wood pile to look aesthetically pleasing and maintain stability. And he's out there eyeballing this stuff, and he does the same thing. He's meticulously picking the right piece of wood to put down in his stack, like he's putting a piece of puzzle together and playing with Legos. Folks, if you're looking to move out of the city, this is for you folks, or out of suburbia, and you want to come out into rural America in this country way of life that people are trying to coin as homesteading. It's just rural country American living. And you're looking to be a little bit more responsible to self with some self-sufficiency, and especially if you get animals and things of that nature, you're going to have way too many things going on that is going to require your time and attention. And you don't need to sit there and play with your firewood like you're playing with Legos like I see some of these guys out there doing. Because you ain't going to have the time. And your time is currency. Now, I don't want to give you the impression that what some of these other men are doing, okay, with their firewood, that won't work. Because it will. It'll work. I have never, not once, come across somebody in my family, my relatives, my community, my co-workers, nowhere here in the Ozarks or anywhere across America that gets this glow in their face and this twinkle in their eye, full of anticipation and excitement when it comes time to cutting and splitting and stacking firewood. But if you want to play around with your firewood like you're playing with a puzzle or playing with Legos in a sandbox, by all means you can do that. All I can say is giddy up, Buttercup, because I'm not going to do that, and I'm just here to let a lot of you people know that you don't have to do that. I'm going to talk about a couple of these do's and don'ts, or these rules that you may have heard out there or you possibly will hear out there. Let's talk about a couple of those things. So one of the do's and don'ts, or the rules that you may come across, is never pile or stack your wood up against your house, your cabin, your trailer, or any structure, especially if it's made out of wood. Never ever do that. That rule I am going to highly suggest that you adhere to. I concur and agree with that little do and don't, or rule. Because let's face it, any wood pile, any wood stack is a habitat for all sorts of other life forms. I don't think you're going to want to lay out a red carpet for all these other insects and life forms to have direct access into or onto your house or home. So I highly suggest that you follow that piece of advice. But bottom line is, you do what the hell you want to do, because it's your wood pile and it's your home. Another rule that you might come across and hear is that you should never stack or pile your wood directly on the ground. That's what I say to that one. You do what you want, but I'm here to let you know that you can flush that out, or you can disregard that if you want to. I have always stacked my wood directly on the ground, and I probably always will. So when you hear people telling you not to do that, those people out there will spend extra currency, time, and effort going to track down or obtain things such as pallets, wood, or they'll go purchase 2x4s and 4x4s and maybe some plywood if they're going to build a platform. Wood. Now some people will go out and they'll take a little extra time trying to find straight pieces of, say, 2 or 3 inch diameter branches or trees, and they'll lay them down parallel to one another so they can stack on top of them. Again, wood. Folks, it just does not make sense to me that you're going to spend extra time, energy, and possibly currency into obtaining or building things made out of wood to keep wood off the ground. So let me explain something to you from my perspective. I moved some wood off here to the side on top here to get to the bottom of this particular section of wood pile. This pile of wood here, all this wood here, serves a purpose, and its primary purpose is to be a fuel source for heating and or cooking. Now this bottom layer here that's sitting directly on the ground, you can almost look at this, and this wood here is more valuable to me than the firewood above it. Why? Because it's multi-purpose. It serves two purposes here. Its primary function of heating and its secondary function of keeping the wood pile off the ground, and it's made out of wood just like all those other products. But if you want something other than your firewood on the ground or any kind of wood, if you want to go through this, might I suggest that you use concrete, pavers, cinder blocks, or at least steel pipe. But I'm just here to let you know you don't have to. So what happens when I get down to the bottom of the pile here? Now, it's going to be wet or have more moisture than the rest of the wood pile, granted. It's going to have a little bit more decay to it from the fungi and from the wood chewing beetles and things of that nature. That's okay. When I get to it, this one, you see here, I don't know if you can tell, it's all chewed up. I know what this is from. This is from what we call the Betsy beetle or Bessie beetle. It's a horned beetle. A lot of us refer to it as the patent leather beetle. These guys can chew some wood. This wood here has been on the ground for a couple years. So when I get to the bottom here, See how wet that is? It's wet. But listen to this. I just knock them. What happens is a lot of the decayed stuff knocks off. Sometimes I knock off roaches or the beetles, possibly some spiders. So then what I do with this is one of two things. Let me show you. You stack it up like this, it dries up. Now, as opposed to having 21, 22 sticks of wood laying on the ground, I've only got 2 sticks of wood laying on the ground, and those 2 sticks will still not go to waste. If I don't want to do this, when I knock this wood together, you see that? You hear that, how solid that is? That's still a lot of energy in that wood that's been sitting on the ground for almost 2 years now. It just needs to dry out. Dry, seasoned wood always burns better than green, wet wood, and with less creosote built up into your flue or your chimney. I'll throw it on here and put it on. I'll throw it over here and put it on another stack of wood that I've still got time before I start utilizing it. And by the time I get to it, it's going to dry out, given the weather conditions, and I time it right and cover it. It's just as good as the wood that it has been keeping off the ground all this time. But the trade-off on the amount of wood that I lose in this mass is so far worth it to me than to spend the extra time, energy, or currency to go obtain, purchase, possibly build anything else made out of wood just to keep my wood pile off the ground. So when it does come time to utilize that wood and it's dried out, it goes into my little buggy and we pull it up to the cabin. Stuff like this, it does not go into the cabin unless it goes directly to the stove. It's that simple. 1 layer of firewood keeps it off the ground. And you've already got it on hand. Another rule or do and don't that you might hear and you might not. Never cover your pile or stacks of wood with tarps. And again, you don't want to cover and entrap your wood with all that moisture, green and wet wood. You don't want to tightly cover your wood. You just still want it to be breathable. My tarps don't, touch the ground, and they're open and there's still airflow. That's the key to it. The downfall to using tarps, for a lot of people, and they don't want to do it, is because they don't last very long. The wind's beating up against them, and they're laying on top of that wood pile, and the sharp edges of the sticks of wood start wearing through and shredding your tarps. And people don't want to have to spend the currency every year or every other year replacing these tarps. These tarps here are over 3 years old, and they stay out here in the elements year-round. I think I've already well exceeded the value of what I had to pay to get these tarps. And I think I can go 5 years on these tarps easily. So why am I getting what I anticipate 5 years out of these cheap Wally World or box store type tarps that you can obtain for somewhere between $10 and $20? I use T-post for my wood piles. Now, you may be sitting there wondering, well, aren't you spending money or currency on those things? You damn right I am, and I'm going to tell you why. One, they're lightweight, they're strong, they're versatile and mobile because they drive in less than 10 seconds, and I can remove them and pull them in less than 5 seconds. And I can move this entire wood storage operation here from this location to any other location. So I have the mobility to do that. The other thing is that the cost of these things, we're looking at about $4 or $5. Let's just say $5, okay? They're cheap. They're economical. And on top of that, and most importantly, these T-posts will last 40, 50, 60 plus years. You take $5 and divide it by 40 years, what are you looking at there? It's probably somewhere 10, 12, 15 cents a piece. Now, the other thing and the benefit about the T-post, utilizing that T-post, is that they support my tarps. They create the hot spots or the pressure points where my tarp is going to be in primary contact with. Now, I could not do this without the use of tennis balls or something equivalent. So I don't have the sharp edges of the wood pile, you know, that are digging into my tarps for so long. They still flap a little bit, but with the way that I strap them down and weight them down, I only use 2 of these little tubs on each end and one little old cheap, 25-cent, 50-cent carabiner, you know, through the eyelets, and I clip these on, and that provides enough weight. I think this is probably, it's just concrete, maybe 5 to 10 pounds. When it pulls in, it pulls all the weight down of the tarp and keeps the wind from blowing them off, and the tennis balls, you know, are in the primary contact with the tarp. I think that's why I get so much longevity out of it. They're not ripping up and tearing up. So I think I can get at least another 2 years out of my tarps. So utilizing these T-posts is so functional and so massively worth the $5 that you have to spend for one T-post. I get my wood, I center it on the T-post and just go to the next T-post, and then I just stack it up. That's it. It's stable, and it's effective, it's efficient, and it's productive. Use whatever materials you want, corrugated metal or whatever, and don't get caught up in all this fluff and puff stuff. So there's my 5 cents worth. Okay, what it comes down to is what works best for you. I hope you got something out of it. Have a nice day. May all your branches become full of fruit, and maybe I'll see you next time. Whoa.